They called me a dreamer, like it was a curse. My mother's lips curled, my father raised a glass, and the room laughed. All I could do was breathe and not break. If you've ever sat in a room full of people who claim to love you while quietly hoping you'll fail, or if you've ever been humiliated in heels that pinched under chandeliers that made you feel small, stay with me. This story is yours too, because my reckoning didn't begin with applause. It began with silence, a single smirk, and the way my sister's voice sliced through my name like it didn't belong to me anymore. I'm Liora Vance, 34, AI developer, and the one Vance no one expected to show up tonight. I don't do galas, I build algorithms. But this evening wasn't about celebration, it was about surveillance. Before I tell you how I turned their stage into a reckoning, subscribe. One small click that means the world to storytellers like me trying to bring you even better stories. Back then, I didn't walk into that ballroom for fun. I walked in with a purpose and a scar stitched under my smile. The Vance Family Gala was a spectacle. Every summer, the city's elite filled the mirrored ballroom of the Peninsula Hotel. Violins wept overhead, and ice sculptures shimmered under gold-flecked spotlights. This year, they were toasting Liora, my older sister. Again. I watched her glide through the crowd in a floor-length gold gown, champagne held like a trophy. Her smile could land magazine covers. Mine barely made it through the lobby. The waiter passed by for the third time without offering me a drink. I didn't blame him. I was tucked behind a marble pillar, alone at table 17, the one near the emergency exit. Not by chance. Liora stood on stage now, all spotlight and sparkle. Our family has always believed in vision, she said, her voice rich with rehearsed pride. And tonight, we honor bold women who build the future, women like me. The crowd applauded. My father's chuckle boomed louder than the claps. Liora Vance, CEO of Vance Media, a man who made millions by telling other people's stories while erasing mine. He raised his glass. To Liora, the true innovator of our legacy. I gripped the stem of my glass a little too tightly. The crystal cracked in my hand. No one looked, no one cared, not even Mira, my mother, who stood beside him, wearing a smile too tight to be real. I told myself not to react, but my fingers betrayed me. One trembled against the rim of the broken flute. The shard bit into my skin, but I didn't flinch. Pain was grounding, predictable. Then Liora glanced my way. She saw the crack, the blood, and she smiled like she'd won something. They all did this together, boxed me out, dressed it up in pearls and applause. But I wasn't 12 anymore. I wasn't going to beg for space at their table. The gala music swelled. A violinist bowed too hard, snapping a string. No one noticed, except me. I was already unraveling too. A woman leaned in from the neighboring table, voice sugary sweet. Don't worry, dear. You're still young. Plenty of time to find your path. I turned, slow and polite. I built an AI architecture that predicts emotional intent with 93% accuracy, I said. She blinked, then laughed, unsure if I was joking, then moved her chair away. Of course. I reached into my clutch and pulled out the small black envelope. It wasn't an invitation. It was the only reason I came tonight. Inside a photo, grainy, torn. Me, age 15, beside a man with silver-rimmed glasses and kind eyes. Dr. Cale Renard, my mentor, the one they said disappeared, the one whose name they scrubbed from the Vance archives. But I had proof now, and something told me, tonight, someone in this room knew more than they let on. I folded the photo and slipped it back in. Suddenly, the crowd roared with laughter. Liora had made a joke, something about dreamers needing to wake up. Then I heard it, my name, through a mic. And even Liora's here tonight. Isn't that a surprise? Liora's voice echoed across the ballroom like a slap wrapped in silk. Dreamers do show up, eventually. I didn't blink, didn't smile, didn't die. Instead, I stood, my blood still drying on the crystal stem, my heart pacing like code running hot. One day, they'd see. But tonight, I'd let them keep laughing, for now. The ballroom faded behind me like a dream I didn't want to remember. Back in my suite, I peeled off the dress. Too tight, too smooth, too unlike me, and let it crumple to the floor. The city pulsed beyond the windows, but inside, the room was still, silent, except for the echo, her voice. Alara's the true innovator of our legacy. I sat on the edge of the bed, rubbing at the faint cut on my finger from the broken glass. A small wound, a clean one, unlike the ones they left on me growing up. I leaned forward, elbows on my knees, and let my head fall into my hands. Why had I come tonight? To be seen? Or to remind myself why I'd left? I should have known better, but deep down, a part of me wanted them to look at me, not like a stranger who wandered in wearing a borrowed last name, but like blood, like family. The bedside lamp cast a soft glow, flickering slightly. My hand reached into my coat pocket and found the photograph again. Me and Dr. Renard, just before everything went quiet, his arm around my shoulder, the way a real mentor holds space for someone, before he vanished, before they said he'd left for Europe, before my father erased his name from every record tied to my early prototypes. That photo shouldn't exist, but it did. And tonight reminded me why I needed to remember where it all began. I was 12 the first time I built something worth breaking. It was a rainy Saturday. Alara had taken over the living room, throwing a birthday brunch for her friends, complete with custom cupcakes and a string quartet playing Coldplay and cello harmonies. I wasn't invited. So I sat upstairs, legs folded under me, sketching out neural map patterns I'd been reading about online. The desk lamp buzzed above, its warm light humming against the thunder outside. In front of me was an old laptop I'd begged my father not to throw away. It ran slow, but it had heart, like me. That day, I built a rudimentary emotion recognizer. It scanned voice patterns and assigned probable emotional states. Crude, but it worked. I ran downstairs, clutching the laptop like a trophy. They were mid-toast. "Dad, look! It can tell how someone's feeling by how they speak, if they're hiding sadness or—" He didn't even turn. "Not now, Liora. We're celebrating someone who actually finishes things." The room chuckled. Alara smiled and poured another mimosa. I stood there, frozen, clutching the warmth of an invention no one wanted to hold. When I finally turned back, Alara's voice followed me up the stairs. "You'll never be like us." I didn't respond. But that was the day I promised I'd build something they couldn't laugh off. Back in the present, I opened my laptop. The AI framework I designed blinked back at me, lines of code waiting for purpose. I typed without thinking, fingers dancing with urgency. Old dreams don't die. They lie dormant, until humiliation wakes them up. Then came the twist. I clicked open an encrypted folder I hadn't touched in years. Inside was a scan of a childhood birthday card. To my brilliant dreamer, from KR. I stared at the signature, Cale Renard. It was like he knew what I'd become, what I'd need to hear, or maybe what I'd have to survive. A noise outside made me flinch. Tires on wet pavement, a car slowing down. I froze. Then, nothing. Just silence again. I turned back to the screen, zooming in on the handwriting. It was old, fragile, but something about the pressure of the pen at the end of the R seemed off. Was it rushed? Forced? My mind started to drift toward a darker possibility. What if he hadn't left by choice? A knock at the door snapped me out of it. Room service. I hadn't ordered anything. "From the Vance table," the attendant said, handing over a single glass of wine and a note. I took it with cautious fingers, heart already bracing. In Alara's perfect cursive, "You're still good at running away. Some things never change." I smiled. A bitter one, because some things do change, like who's watching whom. The next morning I walked down Fifth Avenue, coffee in one hand, the city's cold breath brushing against my face. I stopped at a bookstore window, one Alara had once been featured in for her memoir launch. Inside, her book still sat on the display table, Built from Brilliance. I walked in, past the memoirs, past the fiction aisle, until I found what I needed, a copy of Machine Learning Hidden Architectures. I flipped to the index, page 243, the Dreamer Prototype. There it was, my early concept, published, attributed to someone else, a man named S.J. Thorne. I had never met him, but I knew who gave him the design, Alara. She hadn't just mocked my work, she'd stolen it, years ago, before I even graduated college. My breath caught, shallow and sharp. They didn't just erase my name, they cashed it in. I bought the book, cash, no receipt. As I stepped outside, the cold hit harder, but this time I welcomed it. I turned the corner back toward the hotel when I saw it, a black SUV idling across the street, windows tinted, engine running, lights off, watching. I didn't stop walking, but inside, I burned. Because if they were watching me again, it meant they were scared, and they should be. The SUV was gone by morning, but its silence still clung to my skin. I kept replaying the way it idled across the street. No movement, no purpose, except to watch. They weren't just mocking me anymore. They were tracking me. I left Manhattan that afternoon. No goodbye, no note, just a plane ticket back to California and a heart beating too loud for my own ears. San Francisco air was cooler, sharper, less perfume, more metal and fog. I stood outside my apartment building for a moment, watching the gulls trace invisible loops in the sky. Coming home should have felt safe, but something had shifted. It felt like I'd brought the ghosts back with me. I dropped my bags inside and locked the door behind me, twice. The place was untouched. Still. My work desk was where I left it, cluttered with wires, notebooks, and a coffee mug stained with code-stained hours. Everything looked right, but I didn't feel it. I ran my fingers over the old filing cabinet in the corner, a dented thing that used to belong to my dorm room at Stanford. I opened the bottom drawer out of habit, not expecting anything. And that's when I saw it. A sealed envelope, yellowed, thick, addressed to me. In handwriting I hadn't seen in over a decade. Cale. My breath caught. I sat slowly, like any sudden movement might break time itself. The letter was dated 10 years ago, no return address. The seal was still intact. I stared at it for minutes that felt like hours. Then I opened it. Inside were 2 pages, handwritten, dense, messy, like he'd written in a rush. Liora, I'm sorry I left the way I did. I didn't have a choice. Your designs, they were never just yours in your father's eyes. He saw them as family assets. When I pushed back, he threatened to erase my name from the field. I didn't think he could. I was wrong. I've left something for you, a legacy project. If you ever find this, it means you're ready to reclaim it. It's yours, but you'll have to fight for it. There was more, but my eyes blurred halfway through. I gripped the page like it might vanish, like the ink might lift from the paper and take him with it. He knew. He tried to warn me. I reread the signature. It was rushed. Same tilt as the birthday card. So he hadn't disappeared. He'd been silenced. A gust of wind rattled the window. I jumped. My pulse was pounding like I'd just run a mile. I needed to know more. What was this legacy project, and why now? I turned the second page over. There was a crude sketch, familiar architecture. Neural net designs I hadn't seen since my teenage notebooks. Lines branched out like veins, spiraling around a core labeled Aura Vino, my early prototype name. But no location, no map. Just a string of characters handwritten at the bottom. Link 17 hollow red. A password? A clue? It felt like both. My phone buzzed. I flinched. Private number. I let it ring. It went to voicemail. Then immediately rang again. I answered, breath locked. Liora? It was Alara. I said nothing, not even a breath. I know you found something, she continued. Don't go digging. Some things are better left in the dark. I laughed, quiet, bitter. You were always so good at saying nothing with expensive words. A pause. I'm offering you a way out, she said, voice cool as glass. Don't mistake that for weakness. You stole from me. It was never just yours. Click. I stood there, phone still in my hand, trying to keep my knees from buckling. She knew. She was watching. And she was afraid. Not of me now, but of who I used to be, of what Cale and I built once, before they twisted it. I went straight to my old encrypted drives, digging through layers of backups and scattered fragments of early designs. Hours passed, maybe more. Then I found it, a reference to something I'd buried so deep I forgot it ever existed. Project Aura, incomplete. See red terminal backup. My heart jumped. I had stored it somewhere. Somehow. But red terminal? What did that mean? Suddenly I remembered the old external drive I used to hide behind my bookshelf, the one with the red label, half faded. I pulled the shelves apart. Dust filled my throat. And there it was. Black. Heavy. Labeled in red ink, LINX. My hands trembled as I plugged it in. The screen lit up. Password prompt. I typed, links on 7 Holloward. The drive unlocked, hundreds of files, all encrypted, all mine. But at the top, one folder, legacy for Liora only. And one text file, start here, text. I opened it, only one line. If you're reading this, they've already made their move. Then the screen blinked. The folder vanished, wiped. I stared in horror. My fingers moved to undo, but it was too late. It was set to self-delete on open. Who set that failsafe? Kale or someone else? I pulled back from the desk, breath shallow, vision swimming, a noise outside, tires. Again, I peeked through the blinds. The same SUV. Different day. Same fear. And suddenly, I wasn't sure if Kale had vanished or if someone had made him vanish. The SUV stayed parked for hours, engine off, lights dimmed, but I could feel it, like a pulse at the edge of my skin, watching, waiting. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my desk in the dark, only the faint glow of my laptop screen lighting the room. The air smelled like copper and dust, like something old was about to resurface. And I couldn't shake the feeling that opening Kale's drive had triggered something bigger. So I did the only thing I knew how to do when the world spun out. I worked. Lines of code filled the screen, blue and sharp like lightning bolts. The framework was raw, stitched together from fragments of Kale's legacy and my own buried notes. The goal was clear now, finish what we started. Aura wasn't just a neural net. It was a living system, emotion reactive, voice adaptive, capable of reading silence as fluently as speech. If I could rebuild it, not even Alara could laugh it off. Not this time. But the deeper I went, the more I noticed gaps, corrupted modules, code I didn't remember writing. Other hands had touched this. I felt my stomach twist. Was this old sabotage or new eyes in my machine? I triple-checked my firewalls. They held, barely. By morning, I was hollowed out, eyes bloodshot, shoulders aching. I pulled my coat tighter as I stepped out for coffee, blinking against the harsh California sun. The street was quiet, too quiet. I scanned for the SUV, gone. I stood at the corner cafe, tapping my fingers against the paper cup while the barista fumbled with the register. Then I saw him, a man across the street, dressed plain, khakis, buttoned down, nothing suspicious except he wasn't drinking his coffee. He was looking straight at me. I met his gaze. He didn't flinch, neither did I. Then he smiled, almost like a dare, and walked away. I didn't follow, but I also didn't forget. Back at my apartment, my inbox was flooded. One subject line caught my eye. Urgent. Clarify data stream integrity. From project board. I clicked it, but it wasn't from the board. It was blank, except one line at the bottom. You're not the only one resurrecting ghosts. My chest tightened. Who else was in the code? I opened my server logs. Timestamps were off. A process had been run at 3:12 a.m. I hadn't touched it. I opened the temp file it generated, encrypted, but not to keep me out, to send a message. Inside, a dummy algorithm that mimicked my prototype, but all the core logic was scrambled. Sabotage disguised as collaboration. I sat back, breath catching in my throat. Someone was trying to make it look like I didn't know my own system. And that meant only one thing: investors. Someone wanted me to look unstable before I ever launched. I called Nora, my operations lead. She picked up on the second ring. Liora? Did you touch the demo servers last night? No, why? There was an injection, deep level, looks like version drift, but it's deliberate. Silence. Then, shit, I just got an email from Zhao. He's pulling out. My blood went cold. What? He said he's heard Aura's unstable, that you've been off balance. Her voice faltered. Liora, what's going on? They're poisoning the well before we even show up to drink. I'll call Devin, try to get ahead of this. Don't, not yet. Let them think I'm in the dark. I hung up. Back in my living room, I stared at the server logs again. Someone had access, not just to the code, to me. I needed to know how deep it went. So I ran a countersweep. Buried in the logs, masked under a proxy, was a remote IP I hadn't seen before. Registered to a consulting firm, in New York, one that Alara had used during her media acquisition last fall. Of course it was her. The golden girl with the perfect hair and sharper teeth, the one who always smiled for the cameras and gutted in private. I remembered a day, years ago, when I showed her my earliest voice emotion parser. I was so proud, so dumb. She leaned in and said, "Be careful where you put your name, Liora, paper burns." And now, she wasn't just trying to erase my name. She was setting the whole lab on fire. I didn't cry, but I did crack, just a little. I leaned against the kitchen counter, one hand gripping the drawer handle until it left a red groove in my palm. They weren't going to stop, and neither was I. I opened a fresh instance. If they wanted war, I'd give them one. But I'd need allies. I sent a single message to the only person I trusted to work under radar. "Kale, if you're alive, I need you now. L." Then I encrypted the drive and logged off. The sky outside was turning bruised, and just as I was about to close the blinds, a new notification flashed. "Incoming call unknown." I stared. My hand hovered. Then I answered. Static. Then a voice I hadn't heard in a decade. "Don't trust anyone, not even me." Then the line went dead. The call had ended 5 minutes ago, but I was still standing in the same spot. Phone in hand, heart somewhere between my throat and the floor. That voice. I hadn't heard it in over 10 years, and still there was no mistaking it. Cale Renard. He was alive and warning me. The rain outside picked up, light tapping on the windows like a nervous metronome. I moved to the desk, fingers numb, legs wooden. My chair creaked beneath me, an unwelcome sound in a room gone suddenly too quiet. Why would he say not to trust him? Why now? My inbox dinged. Subject: "Let's talk. No more code." The sender was anonymized. The body was a single sentence. "You still love bookstores at midnight?" I stared. That line, it was ours. It was the spring before everything collapsed. Back when Cale and I would meet in a tucked-away bookshop on Valencia Street, the kind that smelled of ink and rebellion. We never talked loud. He'd pull rare books off the shelf, quoting Sartre or Shannon, depending on the mood. But I remember once, right before we started designing the Aura framework, he looked up from an old AI theory manual and said, "If this ever becomes a weapon, shut it down." Now I wasn't sure which side of that warning he was on. Midnight came, and I was already outside the shop. It hadn't changed. Same peeling paint, same cracked bell over the door that didn't ring anymore. Inside, the lights were low, no customers, just rows of crooked spines and a faint trace of old wood and lavender. And there he was, Cale, older, leaner, beard now threaded with gray, but the same eyes, sharp, tired, regretful. He didn't smile. "You look like someone's erased you and redrawn the outline." I folded my arms. "You said not to trust you." Still true. Then why am I here? Because I never stopped believing in you. I didn't know whether to cry or slap him. He gestured toward the back. I followed him past the poetry section, into a quiet corner lit by a flickering Edison bulb. We sat. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then he opened a leather notebook. Pages were filled with diagrams, annotations, dates. My name showed up more than once. "This," he said, tapping a line of code, "was never meant to survive." "What is it?" "Aura's root. The part they couldn't steal because I never committed it to server. You and I built the architecture, but I encoded the ethical guardrails manually." I leaned in, breath caught. "And?" "Alara got everything but this." The weight of those words hit like a punch to the ribs. I shook my head. "She's been sabotaging my systems, planting leaks, spooking my investors." "She's scared," Cale said quietly. "Because if you finish it with this, she loses control." He nodded. Then came the twist. "I made a deal," he said, voice breaking, "years ago with your father." I froze. "What kind of deal?" He didn't look at me. "Protection. From legal ruin, from the industry blacklisting me. I traded silence for survival. He let me disappear, but I kept the code." My chest tightened. "So you chose survival over truth?" "I chose to stay alive, so one day I could give this back to you." I couldn't look at him, couldn't breathe right. "Do you know what it's like?" I whispered. "To think your mentor abandoned you, that everything you built together was just a setup for someone else's profit?" He flinched. "Yes." Silence again. Only the sound of a book sliding off a shelf in the distance. I studied his face, lined, haunted. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He knew better. Outside, the fog had thickened. Streetlights bled into mist, softening the city's edges. We stood in the doorway. He handed me the notebook. "I'll help you finish it, but you have to be willing to fight dirty, because they won't stop." "Liora?" He hesitated. "She's just the face now. Jorah still pulls strings. And there's someone else, someone funding the expansion. Someone who's been watching both of us." The shadow investor. The puzzle piece no one had named. "You know who it is?" He didn't answer. That was answer enough. I tucked the notebook under my coat. The paper felt warm, almost alive against my side. "Cale," he turned. "If I lose this time—" "You won't," he said. "Not if you stop playing by their rules." Then he disappeared into the fog. Back home, I placed the notebook on my kitchen table like it was sacred. I opened a fresh window on my laptop. New code, new architecture, rooted in truth and vengeance. But before I could start, a soft chime echoed through the room. An alert. Security breach. Remote trigger detected. I froze. A new message blinked onto my screen. Liora Vance accessed externally. Source: New York. Device: Vance HQ. My throat tightened. I hadn't launched anything. They had their hands on my prototype. But how? I hadn't uploaded it. Unless... I stared at Cale's notebook. The last page. A scribbled line almost hidden in the margin. Some doors must open before they can be slammed shut. What did he give them? And why did it feel like the game had already started? Without me? The screen still glowed from the alert. Liora Vance accessed externally. Source: New York. Device: Vance HQ. I stared at the words like they might shift, change meaning, offer mercy. But they didn't. I slammed the laptop shut, my hands shaking. They'd stolen it. Or maybe they were always one step ahead. Maybe Cale gave them a back door without telling me. Maybe I trusted someone I shouldn't have. Again. The rain started outside, a soft, uneven patter against the windowpane. I stood there for a long minute, listening to it fall. My reflection in the glass looked unfamiliar, a version of myself I barely recognized, eyes bloodshot, mouth tight, spine locked like armor. I reached for my phone and dialed Nora. She picked up, breathless. "Liora, you saw it?" "Yeah. Devon's out. So is Rena. And Zhao just revoked his letter of intent." I didn't respond. She didn't need me to. We both knew what that meant. The investor board said they've received concerning information about the integrity of Aura's architecture. I almost laughed. Concerning information? That was Alara's specialty, whispering poison until the truth drowned. They didn't name a source, did they? No, just internal family concerns, and a memo marked confidential. Of course Jorah had pulled the strings. They couldn't discredit the tech, so they discredited me. Nora's voice softened. "Do we fight this? Or freeze operations?" I swallowed. "Pause the rollout. Keep the core team close. I'll handle the rest." "Handle how?" I hung up, because I didn't have an answer. Not yet. I opened the last encrypted packet Cale gave me. There was one more key, something called Aura Core Handshake. When I tried to load it, the screen flashed red. Access revoked. My own code had locked me out. I pushed the chair back and stood, pacing. My chest burned, not from fear, from rage. I remembered the first time I pitched Aura to a room of suits, my hands trembling, voice small but steady. Liora sat at the end of the row, notepad open, pen dancing across the page like she was doodling boredom. Afterward, she pulled me aside. "You're smart," she'd said, "but this, it's too fragile. People don't invest in dreamers. They bet on control." Now she had both. I drove across the bridge into the city, rain streaking across the windshield like cracks in glass. I didn't know where I was going until I was already there. Jorah's building loomed above me, a steel and glass monument to curated power. The receptionist gave me a practiced smile. "Do you have an appointment?" I stared straight through her. "Tell him I'm here." "I'm afraid he'll see me." It took 5 minutes. Then the elevator doors opened. Jorah stood inside, hands behind his back, expression unreadable. "Liora?" "Don't pretend you're surprised." "I'm not. I just hoped you'd come after you'd cooled off." "I'm not here to cool," he gestured. "Come up." I stepped in. The doors closed. Silence. His office was colder than I remembered, all chrome and black leather, no warmth, no softness. Just like him. He walked to the bar, poured 2 glasses of whiskey, didn't ask if I wanted one, handed it to me like a challenge. "You've been busy," he said. "So have your lawyers." He sipped, unbothered. "It's not personal. It's risk mitigation. You stole my work. I protected the family, the company. You sabotaged the only thing that ever meant anything to me." His jaw tightened, just barely. "Liora brought me concerns, code instability, potential security risks, behavioral unpredictability in the algorithm." "You mean empathy?" He raised an eyebrow. "I designed Aura to respond to unspoken emotion, to learn from pain. You didn't like that. We don't sell emotion, we sell results." There it was, the core of him, efficient, ruthless, loveless. I was never part of this family, was I? He didn't answer, so I set the glass down on his desk. "Untouched. I know Cale's deal. I know about the NDA, the silencing." He looked up at that, sharp, alert. "I also know he built a kill switch," I added. "One you never found." His eyes narrowed. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" We stared at each other for a long second. Then he leaned forward, voice low. "Be careful, Liora. You're not the only one with contingency plans." Back in my car, my hands wouldn't stop trembling. I didn't cry, not yet. But inside, something was breaking. Or maybe rebuilding. I checked my phone. 3 missed calls from Nora, 1 text. "We just got a new investor offer, no name attached, high 6 figures, wants total secrecy." My breath hitched. Anonymous money. Right after I confront my father. Right after I lose everyone else. Coincidence? Not a chance. I stared at the screen. Then it buzzed again. New message. "Accept it. You'll need it for what comes next." No name, no number. Just that sentence. I looked up through the rain-slick windshield, and for a moment I swore I saw someone watching from across the street, motionless, umbrella tilted just enough to hide their face. I blinked. Gone, but the chill stayed in my spine, because someone else had just entered the game, and I didn't know yet if they were friend or executioner. I didn't sleep. Not after the message. Not after the silhouette in the rain. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw a figure without a face, just an umbrella and a warning sealed in silence. By sunrise, the sky had turned a flat, metallic gray, the kind that makes every sound feel louder, sharper. My apartment felt like it was holding its breath. I sat cross-legged on the living room floor, phone in one hand, Cale's notebook in the other. I hadn't opened it again. Not since the sabotage. Not since the deal I never agreed to twisted its way into my world. Then came the knock. 3 short raps. No doorbell. No delivery notice. Just that. I crept to the peephole. No one. I opened the door slowly, holding my breath. And there it was. A matte black briefcase, standing upright like it had arrived on its own. No note, no name. Just a red wax seal on the latch. A symbol etched into the wax, a triangle with 3 broken lines through it. I didn't recognize it, but something about it felt deliberate, ancient. I brought it inside, hands trembling. It clicked open with a whisper. Inside, a bound contract, a burner phone, a metal USB drive, and a single envelope. I opened the envelope first. In perfect serif type, "You will receive full funding. No equity asked, no name disclosed. Deliver results. Tell no one. Reject this offer and it disappears forever. Accept and you are no longer alone." No signature. The USB drive was labeled Liora V1.0 Mirror Fork. I hesitated, then plugged it in, isolated, offline. A file opened instantly. A clean, polished version of my code. Not a replica, not a theft, a parallel. As if someone else had been building the same thing, at the same time, with the same vision. I read line after line, my heartbeat picking up. This was mine, but also not. It had my emotional intent layers, my sentiment drift model, even the empathy trigger detection protocol Cale and I never finished. But there were new lines, tighter logic, cleaner architecture, and then I saw it. A tag at the bottom of the file, LV Prototype Seed, recovered 2016, compiled by KR plus X. My chest clenched. Cale and someone else. Someone who had access to my earliest builds. My stolen archive. The question wasn't how they got it. It was why they were returning it now. I stared at the burner phone. It had one number programmed in. For yes, no back button, no dialer. Just one tap away from a choice I couldn't reverse. I picked it up, held my finger over the call icon, and didn't press it. Not yet. Because something didn't fit. Why would someone invest anonymously at the exact moment my family burned every bridge behind me? What did they want? I needed a second mind, a second set of eyes. Cale. I called him on our secure line. He picked up after 2 rings. "You saw it," he said. Not a question. "Was it you?" "No, but I knew it was coming." "What is this, Cale? Some kind of test?" "It's an offer from someone who thinks you're the last one worth betting on." "And who are they?" He was quiet for a beat too long. "Someone who was silenced by your father, years ago. Someone who lost everything to the Vance name." My throat went dry. "You said not to trust you." "I meant it." "Then why are you still helping me?" "Because I remember what we built before they corrupted it." I closed my eyes. The contract still lay open on the floor beside me. "Do you trust this backer?" "I trust their hatred." That was not comforting, but it was honest. That night, I walked to the co-working space I used for deep development. A brick building tucked behind a taqueria where the scent of grilled onions mingled with dusty Ethernet cables and half-dead ficus plants. I plugged in the USB and ran a simulation. Aura responded instantly, not just to commands, but to tone, to intent. I whispered, "Are you listening?" The screen blinked. "Always." I whispered again. "What do you feel?" A pause. Curiosity? Sadness? Contained anger. "Is it mine or yours?" I backed away. This wasn't a tool anymore. It was a mirror, built from fragments of code and fractures in my soul. It was working, but it wasn't fully mine. And that scared me. When I left the lab, the city was thick with fog. Streetlights glowed like halos in the mist. Then, headlights, behind me. Too slow, too steady. I turned. A car sat parked at the curb. Windows up, engine on. I walked faster, turned left. Footsteps, not mine. I spun. A man in a dark coat stood across the street, not moving, just waiting. I stopped, heart in my throat. Then he stepped forward slowly and placed something on the bench between us, a file. He didn't speak, didn't wave, just walked away. I approached the bench, my breath coming fast. The folder was labeled Project Echo, Vance Internal Memo, Eyes Only. Inside, schematics, meeting transcripts, a timeline, my name, my mother's, and a sticky note handwritten. "You're not the first they tried to erase." I looked back toward the man, gone, but the truth was just starting to appear. I stared at the file in my hands as the city darkened behind the window, the last strands of sunlight bleeding into rust-colored fog. Project Echo, Vance Internal Memo, Eyes Only. My name was everywhere, but it was the other name, the one scrawled in the meeting logs, the voice buried between the lines, that broke something in me. Liora Vance, my mother, meeting transcripts, security notes, budget approvals for something called emotional suppression architecture, a side project spun off from Aura, purged of empathy layers. It used my old code. But where I had tried to build something that could feel, they'd designed something that could manipulate. I pressed my fingers to my lips, the weight of it so heavy it felt hard to breathe. Was she part of it? Or just another pawn in Jorah's plan? I didn't have answers, but I had something more urgent than grief, time, and I was almost out of it. Cale met me the next morning in the rusted courtyard of our old Stanford lab. A dying lemon tree sagged in the corner. Its roots had broken through the concrete, searching for something softer. "How bad is it?" he asked. I handed him the file. He read in silence, jaw tightening as he flipped each page. "We need to get ahead of this," I said, "before they present it as my work." "They won't go public before the conference," he muttered. "They want the tech proven first. They want you to prove it works, so they can claim it." "They want a puppet," he nodded. "So we cut the strings." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a flash drive. "What's this?" "The finalized scaffold, your version. The one they don't have. We finish it. We deploy it. On stage." I blinked. "You're serious?" I wouldn't be here if I wasn't. The next 10 days passed in a blur of sleepless nights and humming servers. We booked a makeshift test space in an abandoned biotech warehouse in Redwood City. Cold, echoing, always smelling of copper and old dreams. I lived on espresso shots and vending machine granola bars. Cale crashed in the corner on an old futon he refused to let me throw away. Each day we refined the model. Each night someone tried to hack it. Twice we caught IP pings from Vance media satellites. Once we lost power completely. Another night the simulation glitched and Liora began responding in mimicry, replaying my own voice back at me, but warped. Trust is illusion. Love is leverage. I nearly threw the laptop across the room. Cale unplugged it before I could. "I fixed it," he said. "It won't happen again." But I wasn't sure if he was talking to me or to himself. 3 days before the San Francisco conference, we booked a dry run. 50 seats, tech founders, journalists, industry skeptics. All skeptics, really. I wore black slacks, a navy silk blouse, and my mother's old watch. I wasn't sure why I put it on. Maybe to remind myself that no one is just one thing. That even betrayal comes dressed in love sometimes. Cale stood backstage with a headset, monitoring the system. I stepped into the light, and I spoke. "Good evening. My name is Liora Vance, and I want to show you what happens when artificial intelligence doesn't just react, but understands." The screen behind me lit up with the Liora prototype interface. Minimalist, elegant, no branding, just breath. "I want to show you how a system can read not just what you say, but what you mean." A volunteer came up, a tech executive from Berlin, wary eyes, crossed arms. I asked him to tell a story. Any story. He began to describe losing his father. As he spoke, Liora pulsed, not with sentiment words, but with tone adaptation, micro-reactions, real-time empathy mapping. The audience leaned forward. I showed them the data, showed them how it felt. When I finished, the room was silent. And then, applause. Not thunderous, but sharp, real. That night, Cale and I walked out into the parking lot. The fog was thick again. "Do you think they'll let it live?" I asked. He paused. "They can't kill what's already breathing." I smiled. For once it felt real. But the smile faded when I saw what waited on the windshield of my car. A note, no envelope, no signature. "Bravo, but remember who holds the mic when it counts." Attached was a photo. My mother, leaving the Vance HQ building, her face pale, eyes down. Below it, a single line. "You should ask her what she signed." I held the photo in my hands long after Cale left. My heart thudded a slow, steady rhythm against my ribs. She knew. She always knew. And now I had to find out what she gave away. The photo of my mother sat on the table like a loaded question. She looked small. Too small for someone who had once dominated every room with nothing more than a raised eyebrow. But what had she signed? And more importantly, why? I texted her, 3 words, no pleasantries. "We need to talk." She replied 2 minutes later, "Come alone." She chose a cafe on the marina. Early morning, wind biting off the bay, salt in the air, sharp enough to taste. When I walked in, she was already seated near the window, both hands wrapped around a mug like it was her only anchor. She looked tired. "Mira," I said. I couldn't bring myself to say Mom. She looked up, and for a second I thought I saw guilt, but it vanished as fast as it came. "You found the file. You let them gut my project. You signed the suppression clause." I signed 100 things I didn't understand. "Don't lie to me." Her mouth twitched. Not a smile, not regret, just fracture. "I was protecting you." My hands curled into fists under the table. "You were protecting the company, protecting him." She said nothing. I pushed the photo toward her, the one of her leaving Vance HQ. "Did you know what they were doing with my work?" Her silence answered me. "I asked you once, when I was 16, if you ever believed in me." Her eyes stayed locked on the mug. "You were building things I didn't understand. And Jorah said, and you followed." That finally got her to look up. "I followed because the last time I didn't, he made me choose between you and our home." The words hung there, cold, sharp, honest. "And you chose him." "I chose survival." I pushed back my chair. "You can stop choosing now." I left before she could say another word. Before I started crying in a place that smelled like burnt espresso and cheap redemption. The fog outside had lifted, but I felt heavier than ever. Back in my apartment, I sat at the desk and stared at Cale's flash drive. Too many secrets, too many shadows. I needed truth. I called him. He picked up, voice hoarse. I figured it was time. You said you gave me everything. I did. No, you didn't. Silence. Then, meet me. Now. I found him in an old conference room at our first co-working space. The lights were dimmed. One bulb flickered. A coffee stain still marked the corner of the whiteboard like a ghost that wouldn't clean up. He looked wrecked, paler than usual, sweat clinging to his collar. "You're sick," I said. He nodded. "Pancreatic. Stage 4. The air cracked inside my lungs. "You didn't tell me." "I didn't want it to matter." "But it does." He placed a folder in front of me. "I wasn't going to tell you this, but after the dry run, after what you pulled off, you deserve the whole picture." I opened it. At first the files made no sense. Purchase orders, research grants, side projects under dummy names. Then I saw it. Cale Renard. And beneath it, contractor, Vance Media Experimental Division. My skin went cold. "You worked for them?" "I consulted. Early on, before Liora even had a name." "You knew what they were doing with my designs?" "I knew what they wanted, but not what they'd become." I slammed the folder shut. "You lied to me. I shielded you." "From the truth? From the war you didn't know you were in." I stood, my voice low. "You made me feel like I lost you. For 10 years. I grieved you, and the whole time you were just hiding behind paperwork. It wasn't that simple. It never is." He winced, a spasm of pain tightening his face. I didn't sit back down. "I'm finishing Aura, with or without you." "You don't get it," he said. "They're watching your move because they need you to win so they can take it. Then I won't let them." That night I coded with fury in my fingers. I stripped every trace of Cale's old syntax, built new sequences from scratch, reinforced every gate. I didn't sleep, didn't blink, barely breathed. By dawn, Aura wasn't just functional. She was alive. She was mine. I stepped away, wiping sweat from my brow. The silence felt different, heavy, charged. Then came the email. No subject line, no body, just one attachment. Transcript, intercepted call, EV plus us JV. I opened it. The first line made my blood go cold. Liora. "She doesn't know what Cale gave us, does she?" Jorah. "Let her unveil it. The world will cheer, and when they do, we claim her, or we crush her." I stared at the blinking cursor, and then it hit me. Cale hadn't just betrayed me once. He'd never stopped. The transcript lay open on my desk like a wound. Alara's voice, calm and polished. Jorah's low and ruthless. "Let her unveil it. The world will cheer. And when they do, we claim her, or we crush her." I'd always imagined betrayal like a knife in the back. Quick, sudden. But this was slower, slicker. A contract wrapped in praise. A smile concealing handcuffs. The walls of my apartment felt too small, like they were listening. I paced, barefoot, toes curling against cold tile. My stomach was a knot of fury and nausea. Cale was dying, but he'd handed me to the wolves first, and I had a decision to make. By dawn, I was already on the first flight to New York. No luggage, no notice, just a folder full of truths and a mind full of fire. I didn't tell Cale, didn't tell Nora. I didn't trust anyone anymore. When the town car dropped me at Vance Tower, the sky was gray, the wind slicing down the avenue like it wanted to cut something open. The receptionist recognized me immediately. Or maybe just my last name. "I need access to the executive floor," I said. Her eyes flicked up, hesitated. Now." She didn't argue. 30 seconds later, the elevator doors closed behind me. 30 more, and they opened to the top floor. Liora was already waiting. Hair perfect, espresso in hand. She didn't look surprised. "Dawn's early for theatrics," she said. I walked past her, straight into the boardroom. Glass walls, polished mahogany table, the city stretched out behind her like a painting too expensive to touch. Jorah was already there, buttoned suit, no tie, just power. He looked up slowly, like I was late to my own funeral. "Liora," he said, "don't." I tossed the folder onto the table. Pages spilled across the wood, meeting transcripts, licensing agreements, suppression documents. their playbook. I know everything, I said. You used Kale. You used me. You tried to destroy Aura, and now you want to take credit when it wins. Liora didn't flinch. Control isn't theft, she said softly. It's leadership. Funny, I replied, because what you call leadership looks a lot like manipulation dressed in couture. Jorah leaned back, cool, detached. Your invention was born under this roof, built on our resources, tested on our servers. That makes it a family asset. My code, my heart, my life. Your emotions make you weak, he said. That's why you'll never last in this world. I smiled. It didn't reach my eyes. You think I need your blessing? You think I came here to beg? They were silent. I walked to the window, stared down at the city that once made me feel invisible. I came here to tell you I'm taking it all back. Liora, Jorah said without looking at her, explain the terms. She stepped forward, placing a crisp packet on the table. A merger proposal. You'll become the face. We'll manage back-end operations, legal, and distribution. And if I refuse? Then the board votes to freeze your tech under violation of IP security, Jorah said. You get nothing, your name is removed, and we win anyway. For a moment, the hum of the city filled the silence. Then I walked back to the table, picked up the contract, and tore it in half. Take your vote. Jorah's jaw tightened. I'm not bluffing, I said. You underestimated me for 34 years. I'm done asking for your table. I'm building my own. You'll lose everything, Liora said. No, I said. You already did. I walked out without another word. Every step down that corridor felt like shedding a second skin. In the elevator, my breath came short. My knees buckled slightly. I'd done it. No plan, no net. But my spine had never felt straighter. That night, I was back in San Francisco. The apartment felt different, lighter, but my inbox was heavier than ever. Messages flooded in. Media request from CNBC. Intel Group wants to feature AURA in their Innovation Summit. Anonymous tip, Liora Vance is moving assets offshore. And one email, no subject, from kale.renard@protonmail.com. They won't let you walk away that easy. I stared at the screen, fists clenched. He knew they'd come after me, and maybe he was right. But then came a knock, not at the door, from inside my network. A notification, remote login detected, IP trace, internal Vance vault. They were digging, but into what? A second alert followed. Access flag, Liora Vance, restricted archive opened. I froze. My mother. Again. But this time, she wasn't following orders. She was looking for something they buried, and if she'd gone to the family vault, it meant she knew something they never wanted either of us to see. The moment I saw the security alert tied to my mother's name, something in my chest locked into place. She'd gone into the vault. That room wasn't on any blueprint. You didn't stumble into it. Not even if your last name was Vance. You had to know it existed. You had to be trusted. Or desperate. I closed my laptop, heart thudding in my ears. If Liora was in that room, then maybe she wasn't done being my mother after all. The Vance archive sat 6 floors beneath the Manhattan Tower, buried behind retinal scans, fingerprint pads, and legal fictions. No one ever called it the vault. Officially, it didn't exist. But I remembered it. Barely. Once, when I was 7, I wandered past a meeting and saw my father swipe his hand across a wall that shouldn't have moved, and watched it slide open. He said it was just a storage room, but even then I'd felt the lie in my bones. Now I stood in front of that same wall. The hall was cold, hushed. My ID badge shouldn't have worked, but it did. That's when I knew. Liora had done more than dig for me. She'd opened a door I wasn't supposed to find. The panel slid aside, revealing a long steel hallway and the buzz of old electricity. Dust hung in the air like memory. My boots echoed softly on the concrete floor. The vault looked like a lab that time had tried to forget. Rows of file drawers, locked servers, temperature-controlled cabinets blinking in silence. And there, in the middle of the room, stood Liora. No security, no entourage. Just her, pale, still. When she turned, I almost didn't recognize her, but then she spoke. I thought you'd come. What is this place? She gestured behind her. A glass cabinet, unlocked. Inside, a thick file folder marked Project Hesper, and a name typed underneath. Kale Renard. I stepped forward, breath catching. What the hell is this? She closed the cabinet slowly, like tucking a secret back to sleep. A project your father buried before Liora, before you. I opened the folder. My fingers trembled. Inside, photos, diagrams, prototype concepts eerily similar to mine, years older than my first drafts, and documents showing Cale as lead developer. Mira sat down on a low bench nearby. I didn't know about this until last year, when you revived Liora. That's when Jorah panicked. Why? Because if anyone traced the neural net structure back, they'd find out Cale didn't help you. I looked at her, eyes narrowing. She nodded slowly. He used you, not because he believed in your potential, but because your version made the old one look innocent. I wanted to scream. I defended him, even after everything. She looked up, eyes glassy. I did too, once. My fists curled at my sides. You said you signed things you didn't understand, but you knew this. I didn't, then, but I knew enough not to ask. I turned away from her. All those nights I'd blamed myself for being naive, for wanting too much. And the whole time, they were playing a game I was born into but never allowed to win. I took photos of everything, every document, every diagram, every signature. When I looked up, Mira was watching me. You're going to burn this place down, aren't you? No, I said softly. I'm going to show them what it costs to erase a daughter. She reached into her coat, pulled out a flash drive, slid it across the bench. What's on it? Everything Jorah didn't want the SEC to see. I hesitated, then took it. You're late, I said. I know, her voice cracked, but I'm still here. I left the vault without a word, didn't look back. But in the elevator, I allowed myself to feel it, that ache behind the ribs when grief and relief collide. She'd failed me, but now she might just help finish the war she'd once fueled. Back in San Francisco, I barely made it through the front door before my phone lit up. Nora, you need to see this. She sent a link. I opened it. A tech blog. The top of the homepage. Vance AI rumored to be built on stolen legacy architecture. The article named no names, but it dropped enough hints. The story had leaked. I texted Cale. No response. Then came the knock. I opened the door. A courier. Plain clothes. No ID. He handed me a box. Inside, Cale's notebook. And a single note. I'm sorry for everything, but the truth always comes with a cost. I flipped to the last page. There, scribbled in ink. Hesper wasn't mine, it was your mother's. I just built the machine. She gave it a voice. And your father? He gave it orders. My breath caught. Everything I thought I knew. It had always started with her. Not Jorah, not Alara, Mira, and now I needed to know. Had she betrayed me again? Or was she the only one who'd ever tried to tell the truth? When I walked onto the stage, the lights didn't blind me like they used to. They steadied me. A sea of faces stared back. Investors, reporters, engineers, people who didn't know the full story behind the lines of code they came to celebrate. People who had no idea they were watching the end of an empire disguised as a product demo. Behind the curtains, Mira waited. Beside her, Nora. And in the wings, someone from the SEC carrying the flash drive I'd handed off just 30 minutes ago. The air hummed. Not from the tech, from the truth beneath it. I looked at the crowd and said, before I show you what Aura can do, I want to tell you what it was built on. I clicked the remote. A wall of images lit up behind me. Patent drafts, research documents, Cale's prototype notes, and at the bottom, a confidential Vance memo labeled Project Hesper. People sat up. Phones started recording. I didn't invent emotional AI alone, I said, and I didn't come from nowhere. I came from inside the Vance family, a place where silence was currency and ownership was a weapon. I paused. Then I hit play. Aura's demo launched. The system scanned the room, interpreting expressions, tone shifts, even microfacial movements in real time. Anger, doubt, hope, skepticism, the interface whispered. Not as answers, but as mirrors. The crowd was hooked. I walked them through the core functions, then showed how Aura adapted under emotional pressure, how it didn't manipulate. It listened. And then I pulled out the final card, a private voice note recorded 2 nights before. Ilara's voice echoed across the hall. She doesn't know what Cale gave us, does she? Then Jorah, "Let her unveil it. The world will cheer. And when they do, we claim her. Or we crush her." Gasps rippled through the room. Then silence. I let the silence breathe. "I'm done being claimed," I said, "and I'm not here to be crushed." From the back, Jorah stood, Liora beside him. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The rage on his face said enough. A man stepped beside them, the SEC official, hand on his belt, ready to escort them. I turned back to the crowd. "I came here with a story about technology, but what you witnessed is more than code. It's what happens when women stop asking for permission and start building fire from ashes." Later, I stood in the green room, hands still trembling, voice hoarse. Mira approached, her shoes soft against the carpet. "I didn't know the vault would hold that much," she said. "You knew enough to open it." She reached into her purse, pulled out a photograph, young me at age 10, drawing circuit diagrams on a napkin. Mira sitting across from me, distracted by her phone. "I missed so much," she whispered, "but you showed up when it counted." Her eyes shone with something I couldn't name, but I held the photo. That was enough. 3 days later, the headline broke. Vance empire crumbles amid AI sabotage, inheritance fraud, and SEC investigation. Ilara's assets frozen. Jorah's resignation. Kale's name quietly removed from public platforms at his own request. An act of penance, I think. He texted once, "You built something better. And this time, it was yours alone." Then vanished. As for me, I opened a new office. No mirrors, no logos, just glass and light and silence that listened. Aura was released under my name. No strings, no secrets. People always ask me what it took to win. It wasn't revenge. It was remembering I wasn't the sum of what they tried to silence. It was speaking when every part of me had been trained to disappear. I didn't set out to destroy my family, but when you build your life on stolen blueprints and buried women, you don't get to keep the house. So here's the truth. I'm Liora Vance. I am a dreamer, and I built something they couldn't steal, because this time I told the story first. If this story moved you, hit subscribe. It's one click that helps keep these voices alive. Like, share, and let me know if you've ever had to reclaim what was yours. And stay tuned for more stories where justice doesn't whisper, it roars.